Hello again and welcome. Michael Pizzolla here. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of the Value Capping Rant. This is the 2018 Preakness Stakes edition. I want to thank those of you who got back to me with all the great feedback about the 2018 Kentucky Derby Value Capping Rant. And yes, we had Justify way on top with a gap, big deal. We had Audible, almost got second right up there, and Good Magic in the mix and so forth. And I really appreciate your kind comments. Was it a great betting race? No, and I'll show you why. And I'll show you the parallels of the 2018 Derby to the 2018 Preakness Stakes. But before I do, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Pizzolla. I am the author of the best-selling book, Handicapping Magic, co-author of the classic book, Pace Makes the Race, creator and designer of the original online racing forum, which is now known as Posttime Daily 2.0. You can find that at posttimedaily.com, and creator and designer of the Value Capper software. Now, it's Blackmagic Software 2.0. You can find information at ValueCapper.com. And listen, whether you're interested in the software or not, there's a free course on there. It's a video course. 4 full-length videos. ValueCapper.com. Put in your first name and email. You'll get the first video right away. The next one's delivered to your email box every couple of days. It's great. It will change the way you think about this game. Because if you haven't noticed, the public has gotten really good. It's trickier and trickier to find really good value plays, and that's what value capping about. See, value capping begins where most handicappers end. Most handicappers end at figuring out the race. And I'm here to tell you that is now the easy part. Well, I spent a long time figuring out races, putting it into formulas and all of that. I mean, I've been at this for decades, okay? That's the easy part. So for those of you who are so nice about the Kentucky Derby, sure, Justify was right on top. Oh, by the way, I got a couple of comments on the Kentucky Derby rant. Michael, could you be less long-winded? Okay, here you go. Those of you who don't want to hear me anymore, Justify looks really good in the Preakness Stakes at Pimlico on Saturday, May 19th, 2018. Oh, really? You're a handicapping genius. Yes, thank you very much. Oh, handicapping magician. You think Justify? Yeah, of course, he's a 1-2 favorite. Now, who else to use with it? What are the different pace scenarios? For those of you who want to get into that, I've got some interesting things for you to watch. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you, because I could just say, well, you just Lone Sailor might close into it, and they're the Tenfold and these other horses. If you want to know all of that, watch the rest of the video. Okay, but I'm going to take you through 3 different things. I'm going to show you what we did in the Kentucky Derby, what that kind of pace projection was. We'll do some pace projection in the Preakness. We'll show you what Value Capper did with the pace projection, and then we'll look at some alternate scenarios. And then I'll show you how Value Capper looks at the race, and I'll show you that in action using the actual software as I'm looking at it. The race, there's some historical things. The race bears a resemblance to when American Pharaoh won the Preakness in 2015 after winning the Kentucky Derby. Now, look, I'm not much of a trainer handicapper. I know enough to be dangerous, but I do know Mr. Baffert has brought 4 Kentucky Derby winners to the Preakness, and he has won, let me think about it, 4 Preaknesses. So he's got Justify. So it looks good. It looks good from a pace point of view. I wish I had a long shot and said Justify can't do it because of it, but I don't. Now, anything can happen in a horse race, of course. But from an historical point of view, the race is very, very similar. I believe there were 8 colts in that race in 2015. There are 8 colts in this race. There are 4 in this race from the Derby, 4 not from the Derby, and that presents its own complexities in looking at the pace. So If you're just interested in who does he like, does he have it? Well, yeah, Justify, come on. He looks like he might be unbeatable. I don't want to get ahead of myself and, because anything can happen in a horse race. There are some interesting underneath horses. And I always urge you, look at some of the undercards. Look, this is not a great value capping race in that, it's hard to find value. Because the framework of value capping is find horses you like that the public shouldn't, preferably running against flawed horses. You got to wait for your price and let the bet make you. In other words, get a felt sense, right? So Justify, both in the Derby and in the Preakness, is a horse we like, but it's not a horse that the public shouldn't like. In other words, the public, of course, will like that horse. I'll give you an example of two races on the undercards, one from the Pimlico undercard, I believe it's the third race at Pimlico, and one from the Parks undercard, I believe it's the ninth race at Parks, and I'll show you what Value Capper does to point out a potential value play. But for now, come along with me. I'm going to take the race apart, show you the Derby, pace projection, tie that into the Preakness pace scenarios and pace projection, and then show you what Value Capper does with the race. And I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so to review quickly the value capping framework, it's to bet horses you like that the public shouldn't, preferably running against vulnerable favorites. You wait for your price, and then through practice you get a felt sense so that the bet makes you. Bet every race. You don't bet every overlay. You get a sense for that it's a horse you like that the public shouldn't. Now, in the Preakness, just as in the Derby, there's a horse that any way of measuring thoroughbred performance will quote-unquote like, and that's Justify, of course. Okay? But the public should like that. So it's not a great betting race. And with that in mind, I want to review very quickly the 2018 Kentucky Derby and take you through the pace analysis in the Preakness and then show you what Value Capper has done with the race. First of all, thank you so much for the kind words about the 2018 Kentucky Derby Rant. I got, wow, you had Justify right on top with a gap. You pointed out Audible, who just missed getting second. Good Magic was right in there in the mix. Sure. This was easy. Okay, this is, look, there's a difference between value capping and handicapping. Handicapping is where many horse players stop. It is only the beginning of the value capping process. So once you have an idea of who's come to the party, who's come to the dance, yeah, it's Justify. And then either Audible was right under it. But here's what value capping looks at. Okay, this is right out of the box. The only thing that's different is I now have the tote odds from how the public bet the race. In that 20 colt field in the Derby, Justify, you'd have to get an enormous price, which you would never get. It went off at 5-2. Was it the best in the race, the best colt in the race? Absolutely. Was it worth a bet? No. Similarly with Audible. Now, Audible, I thought, might go off at a price. Did I think it would be 20-1? No, but I thought it might have been 10-1 or so. Got bet down to 7-1. Magnum Moon, 13-1. Wasn't worth it. That's hardly an overlay. Even Good Magic, at 9-1. You have to go all the way down to like Noble Indy and Salamini at 55 and 60-1. Wasn't worth a serious bet. Did I bet the race? Sure. I took some exactas keying Audible. I thought that was the most likely thing. I took Justify over a couple of other horses. Did I make a lot of money in the race? No, because it's difficult when you have an overwhelming favorite like that. Well, not as overwhelming as it's going to be in the Preakness. So Justify came out. Actually, the exacta was pretty good. I think it paid close to $70. Justify over Good Magic. I really did want Audible to get second. That would have been a nice exacta. But I want you to notice, even though the track was sloppy, the race, the pace for the first call and the second call, 4 furlongs and 6 furlongs, was 45 and 4, 111. Now, from the Kentucky Derby rant last time, my scenario 2 in the Derby was that it looks like the pressers can force about a 46 and 3, 111 and 2. Well, I think it was the 3 Promises Fulfilled who pressed a little more in the first call, and as a result, it went in 45 and 4, 111. Not too far off from what we thought the pace would be. And Justified just kind of took control. Audible came from way back, and as did I mention to you, just missed getting second. Now, the projection from Acupressure was that Justify would have this huge lead. When you use software, it works by rules. And this is what it thinks based on the rules that it uses and which I developed, that Justify would have a huge lead over Promises Fulfilled. Now, does it mean it's going to have an 8-length lead? No, but it has that potential. In other words, it can slow it down and still have some left in the tank. So with that in mind, let's look at the Preakness and how the pace may come up. And surprise, surprise, the Acupressure scenario once again has Justify with a big lead in the first 2 calls. Okay? Whether it will be Diamond King or not, I'm not really sure, but let's look kind of under the hood. So that's the one scenario. Justify has run these enormously fast fractions back at Santa Anita, where he was running the 45 and 1 and 44 and 2 and 109 and 109 and change. I mean, good Lord. And then in the Derby, it ran pretty close to our projected pace, 45 and 4, 111. But the interesting thing is to notice what it did in the Santa Anita Derby. I'll get to that. Justify runs those fast fractions. The others can't keep pace. Bob's your uncle. Justify wins. Woohoo. Now, it does not look like there will be much pressure in the Preakness, unless some of these pressers really go all out and say, well, we're not going to let Justify get away with it. We'll try to do it. What happens in that scenario? So Justify will try to go out to the lead, run slower fractions than his fastest, right? That's the second scenario. The other one is Mr. Baffert can say, just go as fast as you can, just run these other colts off their feet, let's get the second leg of the Triple Crown and go on to it. Now, I mentioned Justify ran much slower fractions and won the Santa Anita Derby easily. He slowed it way down to 47 and 4, 112 and 3. Did he have more in the tank? Well, yeah, he had been running 45s, 109s. Good Lord. And in the Derby, the 45 and 4, 111 was no issue for this colt. Yeah? So let's look. If Justify tries to control the pace again of the Preakness, how fast might the pace be? And to do that, we need to look at the colts to be have been on the lead to see if any colt can run faster on the lead than Justify. Now again, ValueCapper, the software, and the Blackmagic software with ValueCapper's Blackmagic 2, Acupressure does all this automatically, but I want to show you what the thinking is in it. So Tenfold has been on the lead, but at a 47 and 4 and 113. Sporting Chance has been on the lead only in sprints. Now, those are fairly decent times. Maybe we project out to about a 112 in a route, but has never been on the lead in a race longer than a mile. Quip has been on the lead, but again, in very slow fractions, 48 and 2, 113 and 2. Now, then we have to say, okay, well, doesn't look like there's a colt that can beat it on the lead. How fast can it be pressed to go? And so then you look at the pressers. Sporting Chance, remember we said it was on the lead in those sprints, has pressed against this kind of pace, 47 and 2, 111 and 4. And it was third. Maybe. Doesn't seem like it can sustain that pace, right? Because It just, finishes kind of in the money. This is not a terrible horse that Wayne Lucas has brought to the party, but from a pace point of view, I don't know. Tenfold has pressed against a 47-2, 112 and 2. Again, a lightly raced colt, so could it go faster? Could it press faster? Perhaps. Bravazzo pressed against a slow pace of 48, 112 and 4. Pressed against two faster paces at Churchill Miles. Now remember, those internal fractions at Churchill Miles tend to be a little faster. But this colt did press nicely in that. Okay, so if you look at those fractions and you put that all together, you might see Justify going just a little faster than it did in the Derby. So we look at Diamond King, one of the colts that Acupressure in the ValueCapper software said might be a presser in the race. And you say, well, how is that so? Because the top race is 48-2, 113 and 1 in that little stakes race at Laurel. Well, it looked at the swale where it ran very fast fractions and in the allowance race, and it projected those out. So this is a potential presser as well. And of course, in my opinion, the most likely presser pressed Justify in the Derby, was second at the 6 furlong mark, is Good Magic, who's already proven that it can press Justify at those fractions. Now, of course, if Justify and Good Magic go 1-2 around the track, good luck with a, $7 exacta or something. So putting all of that together, if Justify doesn't go out and blow out the field, it looks like the pressers can force a pace similar to the Kentucky Derby, maybe a little faster. I'm looking for maybe 46, 111 and 1. That's my sense from looking at just the raw fractions and a little bit of common sense, what the pressers can force Justify to run. I always like to look at any closers against that pace, and there's one that kind of popped out at me, and that's Tom Amos's Lone Sailor. A couple of paces that are similar to what I see the pace in the Derby being. Now, Lone Sailor did close in the Derby and had some issues, but hey, it's a 20-colt field. Of course, it's going to have some issues. Okay, but in the Louisiana Derby, it made a nice close against 46 and 3, 111 and 2. In that little handicap race down at Churchill back in last October against a 45 and 3, 111 and 4, made a big close. Now, in those cases, both closed to be second. So, if we look at the recent Preakness history to get an idea of what kinds of horses, colts, can do well. Last year, Cloud Computing ran against a similar pace, 46 and change, 111, was third by 3 at the second call, and won. 2016 in the slop, Exaggerator came from way back. He was 8th by 6 3/4 at a slower pace. American Pharaoh in 2015. This is the kind of pace I'm looking for on Saturday at the Preakness, 46 and 2, 46 and change, maybe a little faster, 111 and 2, went wire to wire. This is the most likely scenario, that except cross out American Pharaoh, put in Justify. You can leave Bob Baffert alone because he also brought American Pharaoh to that Preakness. And California Chrome, when running against similar fractions, 46 and 4, 111 and 2, was second. So the winners, other than the little bit of the aberration in 2016 with Exaggerator, are pressing the lead or on the lead. And if you look at ValueCapper and Blackmagic's track profiles, when it's fast, you can see the on the lead pressing tendencies, and the energy is in that realm. Now, it's Thursday right now as I'm making this video. I don't know what the weather's going to be like if it comes up sloppy, as it did in the Derby. Well, there was that aberration in 2016 with Exaggerator. 2015, it didn't matter. I mean, the Pharaoh just, was a good racehorse. Okay. So it all fits the way the recent Preaknesses have gone. And can we get any insights on value plays? Well, I don't know what to tell you. When I open ValueCapper, here's how it looks at the 2018 Preakness stakes. It says Justify is on top. Oh, Michael, what a genius, a handicapping magician you are. My God, really? You think Justify? Yeah, well, come on. You don't want a program, a method, whether it's on paper and pencil or whether it's in a software that doesn't show you that Justify is a colt to be reckoned with in the race. It makes the race unpressured. It says that Justify owns both the calls. So you can do this very, very quickly, just at one glance. It's got those other pressers right behind it, Tenfold, Sporting Chance, Diamond King, and there's not much of a gap. Good Magic, they're all in that second flight. Lone Sailor is way down. Now, one quick technical point for those of you who follow all of this. The technical fulcrum in the race is Quip, saying that Quip had the fastest second call time out of its last races. The reason that it doesn't put up Justify as the fulcrum is that I have a rule, if you will, for the software. The software doesn't make numbers for races longer than 1 3/16. The Derby being 1 1/4. Those internal times, those internal fractions can sometimes be unreliable. So if you were to do this by hand, Justify would also be the fulcrum. Okay, just a little technical note for you. So this is the way that ValueCapper looks at it. I will show you how using ValueCapper and trying to quote-unquote beat Justify, what the software looks like on different, what it does under different scenarios. But before we get to that, remember, positing a secondary scenario where the pressers can force a pace similar to the Derby, 46, 111, and 1. This race on Saturday is very similar, in my opinion, to the 2015 Preakness Stakes. As with this Preakness, we have a standout in American Pharaoh, who is over Dortmund and Firing Line, etc. All right? In that race, we see that the time was similar to what I think the pace might be in Saturday's Preakness, 46 and change, 111 and change. I think it might be a tad faster this year. He just went out and romped. The pressers, Divining Rod, and Dortmund, which the ValueCapper software had second and third, they did their job and they pressed, and Mr. Z pressed for a little bit. And a closer came from way back, Taylor Verve, almost the longest shot on the board, to get second. If I were to guess, if I were to posit, of course you have to look at Justify as the most probable winner, yeah? I'm not sure the pressers can keep up. I might be looking at Good Sailor to close into the pace. But let's take a closer look with the ValueCapper software, and I'll show you how I use it in real time. Okay, so remember, this is the static picture. Let's take a look at how it works in action. So here we are at the Preakness Stakes 2018 on ValueCapper. Okay, this is how the software looks right out of the box when you open it up. Justify with that huge gap from 9 to 5 down to 7 to 1 for those pressers, Tenfold, Sporting Chance, and Diamond King, and then the others. Now, the race as ValueCapper looks at it Positionally, it's pressured. When you mix velocity in there, it looks unpressured. In that kind of race, sometimes I will move the bias. You see the bias up here? I'll move it to neutral. Guess what? Justify comes up. Good Magic and Tenfold right behind it. And that's a scenario that I can see happening, but it's not a scenario that I want to bet on, because if it comes Justify, Good Magic, like it did in the Derby, it's not going to pay. It's not going to pay anything. From the late side, if I change the bias to late, we get the same result: Justify over Good Magic and Tenfold. Moving back to early, there it is. If you remember, I showed you acupressure. Now you may think, why did you go through all of that pace analysis? Well, it's the Preakness. People like to know. It's a little more interesting than just showing, well, here's how it comes out. And by the way, Post Time Daily 2.0 and Black Magic and Value Capper make this very easy. In other words, you can say, okay, show me the races where the horses in the race have been on the lead in the first two calls, and it will just go and sort out those races, so you can then get a very quick idea of who likes to be on the lead, what kind of paces they can make. Then when I did my pressing analysis, show me near the lead within 2 lengths of both calls. And again, even if you just have our past performances, it does this. It's great. And you can look and you can get an idea of the pressing thing. Now, again, you're looking at raw fractions and all. What acupressure does is acupressure will make adjustments and make some guesses at that. So with all of that said, what do? Well, is this a horse we like that the public shouldn't? No. We like it enormously. Is it worth a bet to win? No. Is it worth betting against? I don't think so. I really don't. If someone put a gun to my head, I would take a punch with Justify, with an exacta with Lone Sailor, to look at that 2015 scenario where that big long shot closed into American Pharaoh. I would use the whichever ones are long among Tenfold, Sporting Chance, and Diamond King in exactas would Justify. But that's about the only way that I see to make a profit in the race. And, very frankly, it could very easily be Justify, Good Magic again. But again, even if I were to posit that Good Magic will go past Justify this time, if it finishes Good Magic, Justify is not going to pay anything. The only way it's going to pay anything is Justify finishes off the board, and I don't really see that as a scenario. Now, will I have a little saver superfecta with some long shots? Sure, but only as a recreational bet. Let me show you some races that I think are the kinds of races that are just much more clear. And very often you find these in the undercards and not the big races. In the undercard at Pimlico, in the third race, we've got a highly pressured 6-furlong race. Value Capper puts the 8 Pop Keenan on top, and then a little bit of a gap down to a horse called Balivore. Now, Pop Keenan's on a layoff. So there is a flawed favorite in the race. I know they're going to bet Forge as well. That looks a little early. So if this pressure develops, Balivore just loves to close in sprints. Now, at 10 to 1, 12 to 1, I think I will bet this horse very happily. But again, this is something where I didn't need to really break my head. Unlike Justify, this horse way on top is flawed. Does that mean it will lose? No. Maybe it runs well after layoff. Don't really know. Similarly, at Parks, we've got a couple of flawed horses on top in the Parks 9th race on Preakness Day, May 19th, 2018. The top horse, Now We Are Free, just ran a very, very hard race. It's even money morning line. It Behooves Me is a horse that needs to lead. See, acupressure shows it need to lead. Will it get the lead? No, it looks like Bluegrass Demon's going to get the lead. And if it does, the two quote-unquote best horses in the race, the 3 and the 5, won't be able to do very well. And Bluegrass Demon, who's 15-1 morning line, can wire this field. That's the kind of situation that I will take. Again, I have to get, 12-1, 15-1 on this horse to be interested. But it's a much more difficult proposition with a race like the Preakness, where there's an overwhelming favorite and a deserving favorite. It's a horse we like that the public should, okay? So we can make different scenarios, but anyway, I had shook this and made it dance. Looks like Justify is going to be out there. I'll take a punch with Lone Sailor closing into it, maybe as a replay of the 2015 Preakness, which also, I believe, had 8 colts in it. And so that's how the Value Capper software and value capping analysis looks at the 2018 Preakness Stakes. Well, that's it for the 2018 Preakness Stakes Value Capping Rant. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some value out of it. I hope you understand how the interplay of fundamentals and price play together in the process called value capping. I thank you so much for letting me share my insights with you and for spending this time with me. Good luck at the Preakness. Good luck at the races in general. Please remember to wait for your prices and let the bet make you. I'll see you next time.